Welcome to So I Married a Film Critic. I'm your co-host, Julia.
And I'm the other co-host, Barry Worst, the film critic.
And today we decided to watch 1996 Beautiful Girls.
Beautiful Girls, directed by the late Ted Demme. This is one of the last films that he made. His motion picture debut is a film he directed called Who's the Man, which I really enjoy. And then he did a film with Dennis Leary, which has quite the cult following. It's called The Ref. This film came, and then my favorite movie that he made is with Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence. It's called Life. I like that one a lot. But his biggest hit was his last film with Johnny Depp and Penelope Cruz called Blow. And he unfortunately passed away not long after that.
Oh, that's sad. I think Beautiful Girls is the only movie of his I've seen.
Probably.
Yeah. So this one was my pick, and I picked it because this was a movie I saw in college for the first time. My roommate and best friend, she kept saying, I love Beautiful Girls. Haven't you ever seen it? And I'm like, I don't know what this movie is. So I think over the course of our time in college together, I don't even know how many times we watched it. Probably at least 5.
Yeah, and I was at one of those viewing parties. This is back when you and I were just buddies, but I do remember watching it with you and our dear friend Trinity.
Yeah. So her and I were talking the other day about the podcast, and I said, oh, I think I might want to do one on Beautiful Girls. And she said she was kind of concerned about watching it again because what if she didn't like it now? And I thought, oh, that's sad, but I can see her point. It's a 90s movie, would you say?
It's extremely 90s movie. I thought it was funny earlier today when you're like, when did that come out? Was that like the 80s? And I said, no. I mean, everybody.
I didn't say the 80s. I said the 90s.
Well, I said yeah, it's very 90s. Like everyone's wearing flannel. Rosie O'Donnell's in it. Yes, this is a 90s film. Absolutely.
If Rosie O'Donnell is in a movie, then it's definitely older.
I like Rosie O'Donnell a lot, and I like her in this movie. But yeah, this was a point where she was headlining films, and she also had her talk show. So I mean, this is like prime O'Donnell.
So funny to think about that now. So yeah, one of the things Trin and I talked about was just the one of the themes that we'll get into about the movie is, an older man and kind of having a crush on an underage girl. And yeah. I said, that storyline in this particular movie doesn't bother me because I felt like it was handled pretty well. But we'll get into it and talk about your feelings about it.
All right. So,
because you're like that old man now. No.
Wow. Well,
we're the old people now.
Sure, but and it's funny when I did see this film, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. First time I saw it, I definitely identified with the Timothy Hutton character. I absolutely saw myself in the film, and I saw my buddies. I'll just say, I saw this film in the theater when it came out. This was the spring of 1996, and I was a senior in high school. So a lot of these characters resonate with me. They still do. They still remind me of buddies that I grew up with. I saw it in probably one of the strangest double features. This was at the Maui Theater, and the first one on the bill was Beautiful Girls, and the second one, Black Sheep, with Chris Farley and David Spade.
Wow.
There's a reason you're going like, no, Tommy Boy. Yeah, Tommy Boy, great movie. Black Sheep, not a great movie. So it was so weird to watch this film, which I adored the first time I saw it, followed up with this silly slapsticky farce. But yeah, but I loved this film when it came out, and I told everyone I knew about it, and I feel a little embarrassed about it now. Because like our friend Trinity's concerns, there's things about this movie that don't hold up that really well for me, but there's still a lot that I do like, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah. So, okay, so just to kind of give a brief synopsis, Timothy Hutton plays Willie. He lives in the city, Chicago. No, he doesn't live in Chicago.
I have no idea. It's not really well spelled out at all.
It's not. So he's in the big city, and he's going back home to his small town to visit his friends. There's a high school. His 20th high school reunion is coming up, and so he's going back home. His mom has passed away. It's just his dad and his brother at home, and so the beginning of the movie is him going home and basically reconnecting with his old buddies.
Yeah, so Timothy Hutton is the lead of the film, and man, his father and his brother are a sad sacks, these two guys. The brother is played by David Arquette. This is the same year as Scream, so he already has that twinkle of madness in his eye in this role as the really offbeat, to put it mildly, brother. And the father, who it's good casting, and it's established just over a few lines that this is a father that, you know, there's not a lot of affection there. This is, you know, it's a very emotionally distant family.
Yeah, for sure. So then there's Tommy, played by Matt Dillon, and then Michael Rappaport plays Paul, and there's their friend Kevin and Mo. I think that's all the guys.
I think so, yeah. Kevin is Max Perlich, who this same year was one of the bad guys in the Blood Red Van in Homeward Bound 2, Lost in San Francisco. He's one of the drivers of the Blood Red Van. Yeah. Okay,
we've seen that movie a lot since we have a young child.
Who loves Homeward Bound 2, Lost in San Francisco. So yeah, we see a lot of Max Perlich's work.
That's funny.
And and Mo, of course, is played by the wonderful Noah Emmerich, who I know as Truman Burbank's buddy in The Truman Show. He's constantly going over to Truman's house with a six-pack. Yeah, that's Noah Emmerich. Good character actor. Everybody in this is great.
Yeah, they're really, really good. So Willie comes back and he's just reconnecting with everybody. And we kind of find out that there's some complicated relationships going on right away. Paul, played by Michael Rappaport, he kind of had this 7-year relationship with this woman. And then finally she'd had enough. And now she's dating an older man who's a meat cutter. And Paul is just so annoyed by this.
And she is played by Martha Plimpton, who is incapable of giving a bad performance. We just watched her a couple weeks ago in Mass. I mean, I think it's so dumb. She's best known as being one of the Goonies, but like Martha Plimpton is awesome and she's great in everything.
Yeah, she's really good.
Yeah.
So, and then we have Tommy, played by Matt Dillon, and he's in kind of a love triangle with his current girlfriend, Mira Sorvino, and Holly Hunter, Darian.
Lauren Holly.
Oh.
Holly Hunter is not in this movie. This is Lauren Holly from Dumb and Dumber.
Oh my gosh.
And by the way, she's an excellent actress. With all due respect to Holly Hunter is not, and she is a beautiful girl, by the way, but Holly Hunter is not in this film. Just to be clear.
Oh my gosh.
Holly Hunter is listening to this right now like, hey, that's not nice.
Okay, I totally wrote down the wrong name. That's so funny. I should not give these synopses. I don't remember any of the names.
Like we were saying earlier, no, Jules, to your point, like, there's too many characters in this movie. There's so many people to memorize. And let me just get right to it. Actually, this is one of my first big complaints of this movie. So I've seen this film a lot. You've seen it more than I have because of your buddy, and you've seen it so many times. So I'm watching it, and I'm really trying to connect all the dots. Noah Emmerich is playing Mo. His wife is played by the wonderful Ann Bobby. Matt Dillon, is with... Who the heck is Rosie O'Donnell in this? Who is she related to? Why is she in this circle?
She's just the best friend character.
The character doesn't make any sense. She doesn't have a connection with anybody. I was so confused. Like, is she Ann Bobby's sister? They run a beauty parlor? Do they run the beauty parlor? She just shows up. The character has no backstory whatsoever. It's weird because there's some of these characters... It's the performances, and it's also sometimes the writing allows a really lived-in sense of who these people are. I have no idea what Rosie O'Donnell is doing in this film. There's a scene where she goes to a convenience store with Matt Dillon and Timothy Hutton, and she has this long monologue, and it's a great monologue. It is. It's really funny, but I'm just going, why are they hanging out with her? What does this scene have to do with anything? And it doesn't. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just the writer kind of spouting off this long diatribe about what makes women beautiful and expectations versus the reality of that men have towards women. But again, like, I'm just going, who is Rosie O'Donnell? Did she go to high school with these guys? Is she an ex-lover? Is she a sister? No idea whatsoever.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think she's just the best friend character to Mo's wife, and then obviously to Sharon, Mira Sorvino. And I think she's just there to like help move the plot along a little bit and to give good advice.
Implants, collagen, plastic, cap teeth, the fat sucked out, the hair extended, the nose fixed, the bush shape. These are not real women, all right? They're beauty freaks. And they make all us normal women with our wrinkles, our puckered boobs, hi Bob, our cellulite feel somehow inadequate. Well, I don't buy it, all right?
She has some of the splashiest dialogue. Yeah. She really does. Like, if you know, I was certainly a fan of Rosie O'Donnell when she was doing, you know, these character performances. Or, I mean, you know, it's funny because, like, you see her in, like, A League of Her Own or Sleepless in Seattle, and she really has something. It's not just that she's a scene stealer. Like, she has a real strong presence. She's really funny. Her timing is always sharp. But this was around the time where she was in the Flintstones. And we forget, like, it's silly now, but, like, the Flintstones was a huge hit. And it was one of the reasons why, I mean, she was kind of ubiquitous for a while. So, I mean, she was a real big name, like a lot of the actors in this movie, to be in this film. But again, it's like, it's frustrating because I'm going, okay, like, you've got a great monologue. If she was ever going to be up for Best Supporting Actress for any movie, it would definitely be in this one because she kills these monologues. She really does. But I'm going, who are you? Who are you? Are you a new in town? She, you know, that this is...
No, she clearly has some, like, backstory with them.
But still, anything. Give me anything. There's nothing.
Okay, well, she's just a peripheral character, really. So
there's a lot of those in this.
Yeah, there are. But I think the big themes are obviously that these men are going back to their high school reunion, and all but one of them... are not married.
Right.
Mo's the only one who's got a wife and kids, and the rest are just kind of floating along. They don't really know what they're doing. They're stringing other women along. They're, you know, these women have asked them for some type of commitment, and they're just like not doing it.
Well, there's Matt Dillon, the strange, bizarrely ageless Matt Dillon. The guy has looked the same since 1983. It is bizarre. I am very jealous of Matt Dillon. Dillon has to choose between Lauren Holly, not Holly Hunter, Lauren Holly and Mira Sorvino. You poor schmuck. You have to choose between those women. And, I mean, Sorvino, and I love Sorvino and just about everything, Sorvino's character is heartbreaking in this. Yeah. Because she really is holding on to this guy who is clearly not able to let go of the love of his high school experience, which is, you know, I got to say, very well played by Lauren Holly. And Lauren Holly does not hesitate for a second to make this character unsympathetic. Which I think that's something I always admire when an actor just digs into, like, no, this character is not likable, and, you know, there's no shying away from it. And she goes all in, which I really admire. It's a great performance by Holly. There's a lot of depth to this character. She's not the town floozy. She's not, you know, a tragic alcoholic. She's kind of all of that, but she's also, there is pathos to this character. She longs for her past as much as Dylan does. That's really the thing they have in common the most. They want to be as cool as they were.
When
and it's never going to be that good again.
The top of everybody, you know, they were probably prom king and queen or whatever it was in that town, you know, and everybody thought they were so amazing. And now they're still in this town, only they're not. You know, they're just regular people, and that kills them.
Holly has the name of her character is Darian Smalls, and I love that. It is definitely a name I'm sure the director really thought about. It is one of those names, like, you know, for me, it was like Jessica Hurwitz. One of those names, like, you hear the name, like, oh, Darian Smalls, you know, whatever happened. So, like, there's like this weight to her because she clearly used to be such a big deal in this town. It's like if Laura Palmer didn't die in Twin Peaks, she would be this girl. And one of my favorite things about this movie, certainly watching it tonight, it's a sad touch, but I found it kind of funny, was she has a daughter, and this little actress is doing a killer job. It's just a bunch of reaction shots. She doesn't have a character. It's just like, Mommy, can you play with me? No, quiet. And like sad look in the little girl. Daddy, are you okay? Sad look on the little girl. Just like a bunch of tragic reaction shots on this little girl. I like, man, this girl is killing it. She's got no character, but yeah.
Yeah, she's just there so that we definitely know that this Darian is terrible.
A terrible parent.
Yeah, terrible parent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Willie comes home, and right away he kind of notices that there's a new neighbor next door, played by Natalie Portman.
You grew up here?
Yeah.
Don't visit much?
Nope.
Mom dead?
You a cop?
No.
Yeah, my mother's dead.
I knew it. Your dad's kind of a sad guy. Your brother's kind of missing that thing that having a mom gives you. It's a lonely house you got, you don't mind me saying.
What's your name?
Marty.
As in Martha?
As in Marty. Name for a grandfather I never even knew, Martin. So, now I'm Marty. Just Marty, a girl named Marty. It is, I think, the bane of my existence.
How old are you?
13.
Ah.
But I'm an old soul. So why'd you come back?
Well... my high school reunion.
Heavy.
Yeah.
So what's your name?
Willie.
Willie? I like your burns.
Thanks.
You're kind of cool.
How do you mean?
I don't know. It's just a call. You don't think you are?
No, I think I am.
You are. I think.
Yeah?
Maybe not. I'm gonna go.
Yeah, I'll see you around. Marty.
Yeah, Portman. I mean, this is, I think, her third film. Her first movie of note, of course, is The Professional, and then a year later, she played Al Pacino's. Is it the daughter or the stepdaughter? She's in Heat, and she's killer in that. And this was probably her big breakout role before her Queen Amidala years. But yeah, Portman is sensational in this. I don't like a lot of her dialogue because it's so overly written, and we'll get into that. There's a lot of dialogue in this movie where it sounds like dialogue.
It does. It doesn't sound like real person conversation at all.
This is definitely around like that Kevin Williamson time, or like, Dawson's Creek.
Yes.
Where, Pacey and Dawson be sitting around the creek talking about Kierkegaard and Nietzsche. And I'm like, no, you guys are in high school. You're listening to garbage. Like, you don't care about this.
Well, that show, Dawson's Creek, I watched it, I think, for the first 4 years that it was on. Because I think once they graduated high school, I was like, this is kind of lame. But
I'm sure the actors are saying the same thing. What are we doing?
But the dialogue was what kind of got you, because you're thinking, who talks like this?
Yeah.
I don't talk like that.
Yeah.
I wish I could talk like that.
Right. And I think we all feel that way.
Clever.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, in college, yes. High school, no way.
I don't think you were talking like that in college.
Well, I hung around with some cool intellectual dudes. Some.
All right. Because she says stuff like, like he comes out, just like looks at her from like a second story window, and she goes, "Oh, Romeo and Juliet, the dyslexic version."
It's clever, but it's also sitcom-y. There's a lot of that in this. There's a lot of that's another big problem I have with this movie. And we'll get into it because, man, there's so much plot to get into. But like, there's no plot. It's all banter. Thankfully, the banter is really good.
The banter is funny.
Most of it's really, really funny, and most of it's really engaging, but there's no story. It's all banter. Characters enter, characters leave. Sometimes they have some dramatic weight, sometimes they have backstory, and sometimes there's none whatsoever. And some of these great actors, they're in this film, and then they just leave the film.
Okay, but the story is about relationships and committing and when to walk away. I have to say, the women in this movie are so strong, and they may have held on for a little bit too long, but during the course of the film, they're like, okay, I've hit rock bottom with you, and I'm out of here. And it forces the guys to really make some decisions.
Yeah, I mean, just to, the title characters, if you will, we got Annabeth Gish, who is ultimately the lawyer / long-suffering sweetheart who Timothy Hutton is engaged to. Lauren Holly.
No, they're not engaged.
They're not engaged?
No, they're just dating.
We're
just dating. It's been 11 months. He's not even sure about her. But when you finally meet her near the end, you're like, okay, she's amazing. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's that character who, by the way, almost has almost nothing to do in this movie. And I like Annabeth Gish, but she's like, it's again, it's like reaction shot. She has no character to play. We mentioned Lauren Holly, who's great as Darian. Rosie O'Donnell, what are you doing in this movie? Mira Sorvino, who's heartbreaking. Martha Plimpton, terrific. Natalie Portman, terrific. And then Uma Thurman. Uma Thurman, it's interesting because it definitely feels like it's almost like special appearance by Uma Thurman. Uma Thurman literally walks into this film and is established that she is the cousin of Stinky, a great character actor, Pruitt Taylor Vance, who's got some really wonderful moments. He owns the pub. And Thurman's character is, it's a great introduction because the bartender tells us not only she's cool, she's like beautiful and she has a boyfriend, but she's really cool. And immediately that endears her to us and endears her to the other characters. And she has a very well written bit with Michael Rappaport at the midpoint where kind of on a whim, she goes on a date with him. And over the course of the date, it's clear that he's only taking her out so he can show off because his girlfriend, played by Martha Plimpton, is within eye view of them. And she's able to, it's basically to establish jealousy. And initially the scene goes extremely well, but then again, a nice character moment that Michael Rappaport, his character is such a slimeball. He completely screws it up and ruins the moment. And I thought that's good. That's good that happens because that's honest. That means that the writer understands his characters. On the other hand, I'm jumping a little bit ahead. On the other hand, there is the scene where Timothy Hutton goes to the piano and sings Neil Diamond. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that. Is this where it started? Because honestly, I don't know. And look, my parents had the vinyl soundtrack to the jazz singer.
Sweet Caroline?
No. But I grew up like hearing, Neil Diamond songs, but I never thought this is like one of the great Neil Diamond songs. I swear, like after this movie, that's when I started hearing it at baseball games, at weddings. I think
this movie got it going. Don't you think?
It's funny because it's a cult film too, but yeah, I mean, and this is that weird time where you see this stuff all the time in the movies. Like the following year was My Best Friend's Wedding with that stupid sing-along. And then, the same year, Scream 2, Jerry O'Connell sings I Think I Love You a cappella in a cafeteria. And then Heath Ledger in 10 Things I Hate About You. Yeah. This is like the decade of bad karaoke in movies. I think the only example I would go to bat for, I really love it, is the scene with Jude Law and Matt Damon in The Talented Mr. Ripley. Otherwise, I can't stand these scenes. They stop the movie cold. We're supposed to be like, oh, this is so cutesy, wonderful. But I was just cringe city this whole moment. Good times never felt so good. Smarmy and corny, stupid, and just like corny reaction shots. Like, movie, you don't need this scene.
Yeah. You're probably right that they didn't need the scene.
No.
But she says, play something. And instead of just playing some moody, jazz like he does later on, he wants to liven the place up. I don't know.
Look, when I saw this in the theater, I liked the scene. I thought it was delightful. I think the fact that this song is ubiquitous with drunk middle-aged white guys singing along at the top of their lungs, I think that's maybe the problem.
Now, I think now that you've had some time from it and you're thinking about how it is played everywhere, it's a little more annoying to you. Maybe back then it was a fresh idea.
Sure. But there are so many Neil Diamond songs I wish they'd be singing, not that one. Because I think it's kind of ruined it. Like that song is so, for me, it's like when you go to any wedding and they play like the Macarena or Sir Mix-a-Lot. Like these songs used to be cool. These songs, I used to like listening to these, but I mean, like the Macarena comes on the radio, I'm turning the channel because I remember dancing to this at a wedding.
Oh my gosh.
Which is embarrassing to admit in any capacity.
That's true.
Yeah.
So the Uma Thurman character named Andira, is she even a real person? Because
Yeah, she's extremely idealized, and the characters make a point of it. And that is an interesting thing that this movie is exploring, just the idea that these guys, there is the idealized version of women, and then there is the reality of it. And they don't know how to deal with reality. They don't know how to deal with anything that's flesh and blood. They don't know how to deal with anything or anyone that disagrees with them, anything or anyone that has an opinion other than their own. These guys, they're stunted adolescents.
That's true. But I noticed she has some very pivotal moments with kind of the three main characters. You know, you mentioned Paul and the date at the bar. And, you know, he tries to just like bring her to this bar and not tell her what's going on. And she's like, tell me what's going on. Who's that girl over there? And he's like, oh, that's my accountant. And she's like, nice try. It's like, that's my cousin. We're not speaking to each other. She's like, bye, Paul. Finally, he comes clean. And, you know, they dance, and then he gets all sleazy with her, and she's like, I'm out of here, you know? So I don't know if he learns anything from that moment, but then she runs into
Matt Dillon's character.
Yeah. And he says, you know, she's walking alone, and he says, you know, can I give you a ride? And she says no. And I don't know, they have a really sweet kind of interaction, because he's like, you know, do you like your boyfriend, and how's that going? And she said, well, he makes me happy, and you know, it really only takes 4 words at the end of the night. Good night, sweet girl. She's like, that's all I need is, you know, it like trying to say that like love doesn't have to be so complicated, you know, trying to like, she constantly points back to the little things, to the real things in life, to the everyday moments, you know. And she has a similar experience with Willie, where they're in the ice fishing, you know, cabin thing.
This was around the time of Grumpy Old Men. This was like a really big thing in movies.
Ice fishing, yeah. And he says he's just not sure about Tracy, you know, and he's like, I look at you and I think, gosh, someone is lucky enough to like do all these things with you, and they name all these things. And then she says, but Willie, someone is thinking that way about Tracy. They're jealous of you getting to do all those things. So she's constantly trying to like point out to these doofuses that they're missing out on real life with real women, because they're always thinking about some supermodel that they can never attain.
You know how it is, the beginnings, when you first fall in love and you can't eat, you can't sleep, and getting a call from her, it makes your day. It's like seeing a shooting star.
It's the best.
Yeah, but inevitably it goes away, quiets down. So this is my thing. See, why get married now? Why not have 2, 3 more of those beginning things before I, you know, settle into the big fade?
The big fade? It's an awful way to put it.
She's coming tomorrow.
That's obvious.
I got no feeling about that. I mean, I got a feeling of overwhelming ambivalence, but I would rather dread her arrival than not give a shit either way. I look at you and I think it's amazing that there's a guy out there that gets to do all kinds of things with you. He gets to make you happy and spend evenings with you.
Make me martinis, listen to Van Morrison.
Smell your skin.
After a day at the beach.
Yeah, and read the papers.
On a Sunday morning.
A rainy Sunday morning. And pepper your belly with baby kisses. Sorry.
The thing is, there's a guy out there that thinks the same thing about Tracy. And he's jealous of you. You getting to do all that with her.
Let me ask you something. I mean, can you think of anything better than making love to an attractive stranger in the middle of a frozen lake with just a oil light to guide your way? Can you think of anything better?
Going back to Chicago. Ice cold martini. Van Morrison.
Sunday papers. Got you.
I gotta go, Willie.
So in that way, I do like her character, and I think she brings a lot to the movie. But at the same time, I'm like, why is she here visiting Stinky? This makes no sense.
Yeah, why are they so tight? Because they clearly have nothing in common. They're very different people, which is cool. I mean, like, it's like me and my cousin Eileen. Like, we're tight, and we don't have a lot in common. She's a very different person than I am. Maybe it's that kind of connection. I don't know.
It could be.
And and they play it very well. And no, I mean, like Uma Thurman is luminous in this film. It's not just that she's beautiful. Like, she gives a great performance. She kills her scenes. But that's the thing. That's the problem with this movie, dear listeners. Like, to describe the plot of this movie, it's like, it's a scene where they're in a living room and they talk, and then they go to the bar, and they're at the bar and they talk, and they go back to the house, and they talk, and they go to the bar. The whole movie is like that. And some of this is really lovely. Some of the dialogue is sharp and arresting and thoughtful. And sometimes you could just hear how hard the writer is working. How, Scott Rosenberg, with all due respect, he's a very accomplished and very good screenwriter. I like the script of this movie, but at times you really hear, like, he's like, I'm going to win the Oscar for this thing. This is going to be like, and I'm sure, and that's one of the things about this script too. I mean, it's such actor bait. I mean, there's so, for all the roles in this movie that are very half-baked or not fully realized, these are showy roles that actors love. So of course this movie has this amazing ensemble, because even though they probably got paid no money to make this movie, they're getting the chance to really, have these showcase scenes.
That's interesting, because even though the plot is just guy goes back home for his high school reunion, and there's a bunch of just shenanigans and meetings and a lot of conversations, I never thought that it didn't have a plot.
I mean, it's eventful. It's not a boring film, and it's I don't even think it's really a slow film. I think it moves at a really nice pace, and it's funny enough, and it's lively enough. But yeah, the one I would recommend people see even more so than this, and I like this film, but the one that I love is it's an even more romanticized film about a snowy small town. It's the film with Paul Newman, Nobody's Fool. I love that film. It's a similar idea, but I feel like one of the things that makes that movie work so well is there's less characters. It's really about a movie.
That's true. It's
really a movie about four people, really. And, with a few side characters, and they're all very colorful and beautifully played. And you've got wonderful actors like Philip Seymour Hoffman's in that one. In this case, it's a similar thing where everyone is well cast. The characters are interesting, but I sense that this is one of these films that was probably much longer. And that there's a lot we're not seeing. And there's a lot of subplots that got chopped up. There's a lot of important scenes of establishing who these characters are that are gone. I do want to dip into a little bit of history here, as much as I don't like to talk about Miramax, but I should. This is something I talk to my students about a lot. When I first started teaching film classes, I would always romanticize what Miramax did, what Harvey Weinstein and Miramax, that company, did. I mean, they took these films that didn't have a chance, movies like My Left Foot and The Crying Game, and they put them in mainstream theaters. So, The Crying Game would be playing, in a theater next to Jurassic Park. And it was amazing because suddenly these movies that seemingly, you'd have to only see them at an art house or a festival, they found an audience, and Miramax got a reputation for that. They would take these, in some cases, really hard to market movie, and they would, make it accessible. So they're kind of the heroes of the indie scene for the 1990s. For me, I've always been very fond of them. And obviously, over the last couple of years, we learned that Harvey Weinstein is a monster and a disgusting, despicable human being. It has absolutely tarnished the reputation of the company. And it's a weird thing because there's some movies that are Miramax films and I watch and I don't mind because it's like, well, he had nothing to do with The Crying Game. He, that's an Irish film. He distributed it. He didn't make that film. This is a Miramax film, first and foremost, because one of the things that made Miramax so big was they put out Pulp Fiction. And Pulp Fiction, I know you're not a fan of it. There's a lot of people.
I'm not a fan of that.
That's okay. Yeah, there's a lot of people who don't like Pulp Fiction. But what Pulp Fiction, one of the things it did was, that script was red hot. It was controversial. It was confrontational. And it had juicy roles. And Quentin Tarantino cast actors who were really not at the top. And maybe on the top of the game, but not on the top of popularity. John Travolta was doing Look Who's Talking 3 prior to Pulp Fiction. And I mean, respectfully, I love John Travolta, but I mean, he was on his way out. Samuel L. Jackson had not established himself. Bruce Willis's career was kind of on a shaky spot.
What about Uma Thurman?
And Uma Thurman was, she really hadn't had that great role at that point, and Pulp Fiction changed all that. So this is post Pulp Fiction, where Miramax had a lot of scripts going around that were like who's going to be the next Travolta, who's going to be the next actor to go from being on the B list to the A+ list. This is around the time they did Copland, which is my favorite Stallone movie. Stallone did this film Copland, where he played a character role, and everybody thought it would do for him what Travolta, what Pulp Fiction did for Travolta, and so on and so forth. So Beautiful Girls is that kind of a script. It's that kind of a movie. But before we knew that Harvey Weinstein was a serial rapist and a disgusting human being, what we knew about him, he had a nickname in Hollywood as Harvey Scissorhands. He got that reputation because he was known to bully directors. He was known to walk into the screening rooms and be like, okay, we're going to cut this, we're going to cut this, cut this. He was known as a guy who was a meddler. And if you were a filmmaker who wasn't well established, like Tarantino or Kevin Smith, he was known to be one of these guys who would just bulldoze his way and have his way with your movie.
He had his way with a lot of things, I guess.
Yes, awful human being, and but obviously it's not a crime to be a jerk, especially not in Hollywood. And for a while, this is
it should be.
And I don't mean to be glib about any of this. All that to say, at one point, this is what we knew about him to be his. This is the worst thing we knew about him. But I look at this film and I think this feels like a Harvey Weinstein movie, because this movie probably needed to be 20 minutes longer to be as full as it needed to be for it to make as much sense. I
would be okay with that, to be honest.
I wouldn't mind it. I think the movie is that endearing to a level. But I mean, to jump to it, I mean, this movie has a climax. It really comes down to a fight, and it's forced. I don't like the way the movie, because they have to come up with some way to wrap things up to get to the third act. And it kind of comes out of nowhere. It's a brawl, and it becomes a comical fight. And then Timothy Hutton's going to leave town and the movie ends. It feels like they might have found the ending of this movie in the editing room. It's like, okay, well, the fight's supposed to be somewhere in the middle of the second act. We'll just make that the ending of the film. I feel like this movie feels like it's been Harvey Scissorhanded.
Yeah, I was, tonight watching it, I thought that it did need a little bit more exposition on some things. But the storyline with Natalie Portman, didn't you feel like that was really wrapped up? Nicely?
Yeah, and that's one of the strongest things about the film, clearly. And I feel like there's enough of it there that it gets the attention it needs. But I've got some problems with this.
Let's talk about it, because
let's talk about that, yeah.
Because we're beating around the bush. You think it's creepy? What's going on?
I don't give the movie a pass. Okay, so just so we're clear, Timothy Hutton at this point is Timothy Hutton, as we all know. At this point, he was in his 30s, 40s, something like that. And
they're not quite.
He was born in the 60s. So at this point, this is 90s, so he'd be in his 30s, right?
Okay, yeah.
In real life.
But in the movie, all these characters are going back for their 10-year reunion. Okay. So I think they're 28 to 28.
All right. Well, I'm just trying to make a contrast of age. So at this point, he was in his 30s and Natalie Portman was in her early teens. Okay. So his character, it's one thing that little Marty, played by Natalie Portman, it's one thing that she has a crush on this guy. Of course she would. It's another thing that he has a crush on her back. And it becomes flirtatious. And I don't give this movie a pass because it mentions Nabokov. I don't think, oh, you're so clever. Yes, I've read Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita too, and I don't let this movie off the hook. The fact that he knows who Humbert Humbert is. I think a smarter film would have had him deflect that and help her with the little boy that she has a crush on. I think that might have been a much more mainstream decision. Mm-hmm. And maybe a little too cutesy, and maybe that's another path that wouldn't have worked.
But there's let's talk about the scene where she's ice skating.
Yes.
Okay. So that's kind of where she says, "Oh, no, you're going to be my new boyfriend." And he's like, "Me? You know, and you can kind of see him like thinking about, he's like, we kind of have an age problem. And then, you know, she's like, you can wait for me, wait 5 years, I'll be 18, you know. And what he says to her is, I can't, like, you have so much life ahead of you. You're going to change so much from, you know, now until you're 18. I mean, the amount of growth potential here for you is, you know, that's a huge amount of life for someone of your age. And I don't know, I thought he did handle it well in that moment, because that was like the right thing to do.
I think this movie is checking a lot of boxes to make sure that we're okay with this. It's constantly saying stuff like we're thinking about Lolita. Let's mention Lolita. I feel like the movie is really going out of its way to justify it. And plus, as I said, the dialogue, it runs from being very, very thoughtful and interesting to stuff like, I mean, the one that drives me crazy, at one point, Winnie the Pooh is brought up and Natalie Portman says, no literary reference goes unturned. My God, Scott Rosenberg. Is that what you thought? And you're like, I'm just going to write it. I'm just going to give her the line. Why not? Because this cutesy kid character, again, it's like, considering the kind of dialogue that she's sharing, and again, like, this is definitely the kind of Kevin Williamson, Dawson's Creek dialogue we spoke about. I mean, is she in Mensa? Is she a genius child? Is her father a sitcom writer? Like, this should have thrown something out, but the fact that,
oh yeah, because we never see her parents.
Never. And this little girl is like talking to this guy with sideburns who lives at the house next door. Like, who? Yeah. No, the character is a gimmick. I think she is as gimmicky and as much as a fantasy, an idealized fantasy, as much as Uma Thurman. Absolutely. It, you know, and I agree with you to an extent. I think a lot of the women in this movie, a lot of the female characters are strong. They're empowered, but they're also stuck in this small town. So you get the sense like they have a sense of being in limbo. They have a sense of compromise as much as the men do, which is what makes them interesting. Natalie Portman's character and Uma Thurman's character, they feel, you know, it's like the trap a lot of men fall into when they write women. It's like, this isn't a woman who is a real person. This is a woman as I envision a woman to be. Mm-hmm. And the thing with Portman's character goes so perfectly and so swimmingly for Timothy Hutton's character. And there is a moment I like where he basically just, you know, establishes what's going to happen. He kind of breaks her heart gently. But then in the final scene, it's back to being flirtatious. And you get the sense when he's driving away with Annabeth Gish, by the way, that's an excellent consolation prize. He's driving away with Annabeth Gish's character. He's clearly thinking about Marty.
Which is crazy.
He's clearly thinking about, like, well, it may not work with old 29-year-old here, but, you know, maybe in 10 years he'll come back and, you know, see what happened to Natalie Portman.
Because he handles it well when he can tell that she's a little bit, her feelings are hurt, right? Because she's too young for him, and that's obvious, you know. And they're always outside. They've never, you know, it's never like, I didn't think weird. But he says, you know, I want to stay in touch in the sense of, I want to hear what you do with your life, because you're going to do some amazing things. Like, it's a very, like, encouraging.
It is.
I thought appropriate.
Sure. It's appropriate-ish.
Appropriate-ish.
Yes. It's
movie
fine.
appropriate.
Fine.
But yeah, and the final scene when he kisses her on the cheek, you're like, come on, man.
Yeah, that it doesn't feel right at all, especially considering his girlfriend is right there. And apparently at this point in time, most of the grown-ups in Willie's life are aware that he has this weird sort of quasi-infatuation with the Lolita next door, as they're referring to her. So yeah, it doesn't feel...
Which I think is rude, because she's not.
No, not at all. And by the way, I mean, it's interesting how this tied into real life, because Portman, after this movie, she was offered the role of Lolita, and she turned it down. She was, I think it was Good Morning America. I'll never forget. It was on a morning talk show, and it was one of these things like you hear. I remember hearing her say this, and I think I almost like spit my cereal out. I think it was like Joan London. She's like, why didn't you decide to play Lolita? And Portman, you know, at this point, I don't know, 14, 15 years old. She's like, I can't imagine myself playing someone who would have intercourse with a fully grown man. Like, whoa. So she said that, and then
well, good for her.
yeah, it's a great answer. And then it's funny, there's a lot of Romeo and Juliet references. She was cast to play Juliet opposite Leonardo DiCaprio. And apparently Baz Luhrmann replaced her because they did a screen test, and it was like, oh my God, like she looks like the younger sister of Romeo. She's way too young for DiCaprio. And which is funny because at that point DiCaprio looked so young as well. But and obviously it's neither here nor there. Portman has had such a spectacular career, and she's amazing in this. She is so good in this. My problem isn't with her performance. My problem is with the screenwriter. I feel like he's jumping through all sorts of fiery hoops to justify this subplot, and I don't like it.
Yeah, the dialogue is a little too clever for itself, and sometimes you're thinking like, okay, how are these people having these conversations out of nowhere when their only interactions have been outside of their houses, like in 5 minutes? Are they that witty?
It's odd too. I mean, this is, this screenwriter arguably, although he's done a lot of stuff that I liked, he's arguably most famous for writing Con Air. Yeah. And let's face it, like, witty banter is not his trademark. Exhibit A, Con Air. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, if she didn't have that verbal ability, I mean, there's no way that this storyline would have gone anywhere in the movie, because why would he have ever talked to her? It
is bizarre that he hones in on her because she introduces herself as 13. I'm kind of an old soul. She's intriguing. She's adorable. But I mean, we've seen this character in movies before. I believe it was Chloe Grace Moretz who played it in 500 Days of Summer. Like just the adorable kid character who's providing commentary or, comic relief, whatever it is. And yeah, the way Portman's character becomes a part of this world it's odd. Because I just feel like this film is about idealized ideas of relationships versus the reality of it. And I don't feel like her subplot has any place in this. It doesn't, what does poor little Marty have to do with any of this? I mean, she's going to one day grow up to be either Uma Thurman or Martha Plimpton. Like it's neither here nor there. Mm-hmm. The title may be Beautiful Girls, but it might as well have been like, like Handsome Boys. I mean, Portman is an actual girl here, and it doesn't. Yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I think for me, having been a 13-year-old girl at one point and having, I don't know, crushes on random people. Sure. Obviously, nothing ever happened.
And nothing happens here, but just in case we're
nothing happens.
No, nothing happens here. This is an unconsummated relationship.
Nothing happens physically. So there is that part where I'm like, oh, I can relate to her in some ways, but like you're right, his character, I mean, is he so confused about his relationship with Tracy? Like, is that relationship that confusing that he's like, a 13-year-old, that sounds good?
That's the problem. Yeah, because that's the thing though, Jules, and I think you nailed it. It's like, I mean, to think of my own life when I was in high school, when I was in college, I definitely had friendships with women who are younger. My dear friend Lisa, who I'm still great friends with now, and she was younger than me. She was the sister of my college roommate Dwight, and I love Lisa. She's one of my favorite people, and she's always been like a younger sister. And we never had a romantic relationship, and there was never anything flirtatious about it. It was just this really great relationship, this great friendship that just always stayed at a particular, at a very like mature level. It's different when it's flirtatious, and it's different when, it's to state the obvious, it's different when the guy is old enough to drive and she's not old enough to see a PG-13 movie, which is a joke in the film.
Right. Yeah. And he's way older than
older
to drive. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, on the one hand, yeah, kudos to you, Scott Rosenberg, for attempting this subplot, but I feel like it doesn't work because I just feel like it's working way too hard to make it seem like it's okay, and it's not.
Well, and he does talk to Mo about it, and Mo is like, dude, no.
But then they make a joke of it that Mo is seeing the two of them speak at a distance. It's making a joke. of, you know, like, oh, there he goes again going after the little girl next door.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, he's not going after her, but yeah, there is a layer of inappropriateness.
Right. And
yeah.
Mo is witness to it. I mean, look, like this is not a PC film at all. And I think that's one of the things about it that makes it very 90s, but it's also one of the things that kind of works in other circumstances where the dialogue is unguarded, the characters are unguarded, and there's something enjoyable about that. And the fact that, you know, for example, Michael Rappaport's character is so deplorable, but there's something comic about that. Having this little girl be in the circle of these alcoholic douchebags just doesn't feel right. I think a movie about her character could be something really special, but I don't quite like the way Portman is shoehorned in this movie, as much as I got to say, like, her performance again is dazzling. She's so good.
And that's probably why I liked it so much. You know, when I first saw it, is she is so good.
Yeah.
And you know, there is nothing like physical that happens between them.
Right.
So you're like, okay, well, whatever. You know, he was there visiting home for 2 weeks, and this is a blip on the radar. But if if this was my daughter, I'd be so ticked. I would be like, what are you doing? Get away from her.
Giving her an inner life and giving her some depth would have, I think, gone a long way to making this work even more. Who are her parents? What is she really like? Yeah, because as is, she feels as idealized as the Uma Thurman character. She feels as much of a fantasy as even the Rosie O'Donnell character. What are you doing in this town? Yeah. That's the thing about this movie. I mean, there are things about it I love because the movie wants to be as lived in as someone who's lived in a town their whole life, and you know all your secrets about everybody. Some of that is here, and some of this is clearly contrived, clearly written by a screenwriter. Mm-hmm. There's things that I like. I want to throw out, like you mentioned the soundtrack. There's some fun soundtrack choices. One of my favorite '80s tunes, "I Got You" by the Split Enz, is on the soundtrack. Always nice to hear that in a movie. There's a scene where Matt Dillon and Michael Rappaport are torn between going to a social function or staying home and watching Rich Man, Poor Man with all the commercials, which I love. Rich Man, Poor Man was, in its day, it was like the Thornbirds or Roots or The Winds of War. It was one of those mini series that you just like, everybody was obsessed with for a while. And then the last line that one of the characters has is "Stay cool forever."
Yeah,
I love that because that's obviously
what you would write in a yearbook.
Yeah. Right? And and I, like, my friend Shay still says stuff like that all the time. Like some I definitely have a couple friends, that one especially, who like high school is like yesterday, and we talk about high school like it just happened. So there is a lot of honesty. There's a lot of truth to this movie. And I told you this, like, Rosenberg dug deep. I mean, it was a very much like an autobiographical film. What was interesting was years after this film came and went from theaters, and it didn't do well in theaters. It has a cult following. But he wrote a series called October Road, and October Road it's basically the sequel to Beautiful Girls. It's about what happened when he went back to this town and the movie had come out and all these characters had seen themselves. So in the show October Road never references Beautiful Girls, but like if you know Beautiful Girls, you go, okay, that's the Darien. That's you're able to put everybody together. So
I remember when that show came out.
Yeah, and I watched it. I enjoyed it.
I never watched it.
I'm trying to remember if it even made the entire season. It didn't go the distance. The reviews were kind of up in the air, but I liked it. I watched it.
Didn't you say that everyone in that town just hates this guy?
I don't know. Well, I don't know what his standing is now, but I know, like, apparently October Road was very honest about people saw Beautiful Girls and like, hey man, like I didn't say that, I didn't do that, and
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I mean, as a writer, you're supposed to write what you know.
Yeah,
sometimes it doesn't work out.
Sometimes it backfires.
Yeah. If it's too autobiographical, and some people obviously are not going to like the depiction.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's good stuff, and the actors here are really, in some cases, they're digging so deep in roles that they don't have a lot of clarity to them. I still think, like, if this movie was longer, or just cut in a way that it emphasized character and didn't worry about these little. It's so episodic,
It is, yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're making me like it less the more I talk to you, but I still like it.
Watching it tonight with you, I realized that I liked it more than I thought I would. I was afraid I was kind of like what Trinity was saying. I was afraid I was going to watch and be like, oh, this doesn't hold up at all. No, there's a lot I like about this movie. I mean,
there's a lot of jokes and words they use that would now be considered not cool to say.
Yeah, as I said, it's not a PC film at all. It wasn't that way in '96. It's not that way now. But
there's still a lot of funny things. Yeah. A lot of funny jokes that I laughed out loud.
Yes.
But I'll laugh at anything. Anyone who knows me, it's like...
You don't have to defend your sense of humor.
No, I mean...
It's okay. I'll laugh at anything.
I know I really will. Unless it's just completely horrific. It doesn't take much, really. It really doesn't. So, there you go.
There you go. You'll laugh at anything.
Anything.
No, not anything. No. I know you do like this film a lot, and again, it's because this is some. I mean, it's funny. Like, I mean, again, this is a cult film. It did not do well in theaters. It was not in theaters for very long, but I think it was sort of the VHS era. Really did a lot. I think
we have this on VHS.
I have it. I have it in a box in my office.
We do. Yeah. Anybody know where we can get a VHS player now?
I have a VCR.
Oh, a VCR, yes.
Yeah.
Somewhere. We have it somewhere.
Yeah, we have a VCR. I mean, it only plays it backwards, but yeah, I got it. I got it. It works. So, what would you give it on a star rating? And I'll say, like, when I saw this 25 years ago, 4 stars, and it made my top 10 best of the year list when I first saw it.
Yeah. I think I would give it 3 stars because I still really like it, even though, there are things about it that I'm like, okay, well, but, like we discussed, a few little problems here and there. But overall, I enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree. 3 stars, definitely. Because even watching it tonight, again, like I feel like this is a movie that Harvey Weinstein probably got his grubby grubs all over, because at one point, like, I'm going like, oh yeah, that's right, Mira Sorvino is in this. Mm-hmm. She vanishes for a long time. Martha Plimpton vanishes. The character that is established that's her boyfriend, the guy who
the meat cutter.
The meat cutter, like, he has one quick scene. Clearly, it was a well-defined character. It would have been nice to have, had more of that. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't need more of the meat cutter. But
I want more meat cutter. I want more meat cutter. Could have saved this movie.
But yeah, there could have been more of some other of the main characters for sure. Well, you want more Rosie O'Donnell backstory, so
yeah, any backstory.
Let's just talk about that again.
She won a lottery, and she all of a sudden won this house, and that's why she's in this town, and she has a thicker accent than everyone else, and she's different from everybody else in the town. Anything to explain what she's doing there. I mean, her character, it's not just that she just...
Oh my God. Don't do it again.
She just doesn't seem like she belongs in this town. I mean, she's just so different from everybody else in this town. They all have a very specific rhythm. She doesn't. She's, Rosie O'Donnell has always had her own sort of style. And
all right. Well, if you could give any alternative ending,
oh my gosh,
what would you say? Oh no, you haven't thought of one?
I mean, I wouldn't know where to begin.
Yeah, there's so many characters.
I mean, this movie resolves its problem with a fist fight, which is, again, I find really, really lazy. I mean, if this film really had the cojones that it needs, I'd say it's like a fire and the town burns down. And Willie is driving away, and he looks in his rear view, and he's like, "Oh, look at that!" And it's all flames.
Oh my God!
And all the couples, they're all kind of standing around. They're watching the bar. They're watching the neighborhoods. Everything just burns. Everything's just burning down. Yeah. Because even though it was snowing, but it stopped snowing, and it's ironic. It stopped snowing, and the whole town burns down. And, they're all kind of standing around. They're all trying to figure out what they're going to do next. Or is our relationship going to last? What's going to happen to this town? And they all hold hands, and they all start going, "Where it begins,
I can't begin to know it."
Yeah, they all start singing Neil Diamond a cappella, and the credits roll, and the flames continue to burn.
Oh my God.
That would have been my preferred ending for Beautiful Girls.
Wow.
No, not really. I have no idea. Again, there's too many subplots in this movie. I feel like if Ted Demme, he's not with us anymore, unfortunately. But if someone attached to this film, even Scott Rosenberg, if they could put together a director's cut or a producer's cut, like any kind of alternate version, I'd like to see it.
Well, it's funny because the beginning of the movie is Willie meeting up and saying hi to everybody, and at the end, it's him saying goodbye to everybody.
Right? It's like the ending of The Wizard of Oz twice.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. So I don't know. You're right. It's just the fight, and then people are having. All of a sudden, they're having these revelations of, oh man, I've been a terrible person. I need to fix some things.
Well, as I was talking to you about, I mean, we didn't talk throughout the entire film, but as the film begins, it's like this montage of Willie basically leaving to go to the town. And at one point, he's speaking to the owner, I guess, of the bar that he's performing his piano music in. And there's a bit of dialogue here. We don't hear any of it. They're just playing that ridiculous Beautiful Girl song over the soundtrack. And it's like, did they decide like we don't need the scene, or like let's just keep the scene, but we don't need the audio. Let's just really, really push that soundtrack.
Yeah, the song that went nowhere.
Yeah, even though it's in the movie like 5 times. But yeah, just looking at it tonight, like I enjoy the film. I like the film, but it does feel like a compromised movie.
Okay. I can appreciate that.
What's your favorite subplot in this movie?
Oh, my favorite subplot? I like all of the scenes with Uma Thurman, to be honest, because she seems the most grounded, even though her character is so idealized. Yeah. It's like she's trying to teach these boneheads something about relationships. Yeah. And are they going to get it? Who knows? But she's really trying. So I like that. But I also like Kevin because he has really the one with the hat. Kev.
Oh, yeah.
Stay cool forever.
That guy, yeah.
He doesn't really have any other purpose except like just to
hang out,
part
of the guys, yeah.
Comedy, one-liners. So yeah. I like him. Honestly, it's hard to pick a storyline because all the characters are so interwoven.
They are, but there are certain subplots. Like I love any scene with Michael Rappaport. This is primo Rappaport. He is so funny in this movie, and his character is such an imbecile,
ridiculous,
such an imbecile. But he has a philosophy about everything, and some of those monologues that he has are obviously a little forced. But the fact that Rappaport, gives it his, dopey rapid fire rendering makes that character work. I enjoy that character. I love what a bonehead he is. I love how he blows it with Martha Plimpton over and over again. The subplot about how he's putting the snow in front of her house. Yeah.
And I love that he buys a ring with a brown
champagne coloring.
Champagne.
Which is great.
And then they make fun of him and they're like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah, there's great stuff in this movie. There really is. I like the film. I do. But yeah, looking at it with a little more critical eye than usual.
I hadn't been watching it really thinking.
It's been a while for me
thinking about it, but there's so many lines that my friend and I like say to each other from this movie that we just think are hilarious. I will spare our audience that, and we won't quote this movie, but it's really fun, and I do like, even though it completely doesn't make sense, the Rosie O'Donnell monologue in the grocery store. I just think it's really funny.
It's a good monologue. It's been forced into this movie.
Yeah, I know it doesn't make sense, but
it doesn't make sense that they're following her around. Like again, who are they to her?
We know your feelings about her, but like I just she's just talking about how she pulls out like
a penthouse
magazine, and she's like, these are not real women. Like, they are not real women. You guys are going to, you have this idealized version of women, and you're going to like not give a real woman in your life a chance because you're thinking about this over here, which I think is still a very relevant issue today.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the dialogue is good and her delivery is sharp. The scene just, you could have put that scene anywhere in the film and it would have had the same effect.
Okay. Well, they put it in there, and it's a good monologue.
I don't know. It could have been an outtake. Could have played it over the end credits. I don't know.
All right. Well, okay, so we both like Beautiful Girls.
It's a sleeper. It was a sleeper 25 years ago. It's still a sleeper.
Yeah. So we recommend it if you've never seen it. We think it's fun. And then write to us and tell us what you think about what we think about it.
Yes, tell me how I'm wrong about the Natalie Portman subplot and wrong about Rosie O'Donnell's participation in this movie.
Yeah. Ooh, I'd love to get some letters about how Barry is wrong about any of the movies that we've talked about.
You live for that.
That would be really fun. We'll read them on the air.
Yeah, we'll read them on the air. Yes, please, no profanity, but I'm more than happy to take constructive criticism.
Yes. Me too, by the way. Even though I'm not professionally doing this, so
who
cares?
Like, I can't believe they said this about me. You would not put up with that.
No, I would be fine with some mail.
Really?
Yeah.
What if I wrote it?
You want to write one anonymously and then send it?
Or I'd just openly.
Just like, openly?
Dear Julia, here's what I thought about your performance on the Beautiful Girls episode.
I can't believe you thought it was Holly Hunter instead of Lauren Holly. Amateur.
I have to let Holly Hunter know about that.
Yeah. All right. Well, that does it for our conversation about Beautiful Girls. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.